Transdisciplinary futures. Where do embodiment, ethics, and education meet for sustainability leadership? I am Shri Kalyan.
I'm Sandhya Kalyanasundaram. Artists, designers, and educators of today and the future have the particular challenge to create for a fragile world where politics and economics and ecosystems are placed at the tipping point of culture, ethics, and the tradition of the artisan. The sustainability crisis is not merely one of the biophysical environment and its extreme degradation, but also a severe crisis of social, cultural, and the individual environment. These crises are not just outcomes of global demands in technology, production, and volume, but rather complex behavioral issues and the paradigms that sustain them. With all these existential and philosophical issues at stake today, universities offering design education programs have the challenge of creating programs that embrace sustainability through transdisciplinary viewpoints. In this paper, we are offering two transdisciplinary units, Sustainable Institute and All of a Sudden, Time is Paradox, as case studies to exemplify sustainability curriculum design and its outcomes.
Curriculum designers in today's design schools envision the people who will navigate their programs and emerge with unique capacities to interact with the world in diverse ways and design meaningfully under global duress and transition. With the existential and philosophical issues of the human condition at stake today, universities offering design education programs are forced to consider what they train their students to excel in, as well as create new programs that embrace multiple viewpoints through transdisciplinarity and or consider transition as a key navigation scheme. Transdisciplinarity challenges knowledge fragmentation and emphasizes production of knowledge in a reflexive, nonlinear format, ready to respond to uncertainty and the local character. It enables intersubjective and context-specific transaction and knowledge frameworks. Much of the traditional paradigms of Asian and Far Eastern approaches and traditions rest on transdisciplinarity as well, and there is a potential to reflect and adapt many of these paradigms into current approaches and conversations. The notion of creativity is key to culture, education, design, production, development, and consumerism. The need to unpack the notion of creativity through the framework of the arts in Asia is crucial to reframing and redefining alternative perspectives to making, development, sustainability, and education. Education defines the policies, the politics of how we think, make, and act in society. In 2015, when Srishti Institute of Art, Design and Technology expanded its vision, BDIS and MDIS Information Arts and Information Design Practices, as well as the MDIS Earth Education and Communication, were three new courses that were started as transdisciplinary courses. They problematize the fields of art and design within sociocultural, ecological, and ethical frameworks. Further, their focus emerges from and lies in the crucial space of education, problematizing the nature and politics of knowledge in the emergent transdisciplinary frameworks of the two courses. Srishti has developed its positioning of the two courses within the School of Law, Environment and Planning and through the Center for Educational Research, Training and Development. My particular challenge as the Principal Curriculum Designer, Course Leader and Associate Dean for School of Law, Environment and Planning, therefore, is to design and develop these two key courses as programs that would dissolve discipline-based perceptions, notions and definitions of information and data to engage with real life in its nuanced stories, allowing for new discourses to emerge. The units within the courses were developed with the aim to adapt and evolve modes and acts of research, making, collaboration, storytelling, exchange, communication, coexistence, intelligence, negotiation, and leadership, enabling transdisciplinary and embodied engagement in the field. The transformation of consciousness lies at the heart of both information arts and information design practices and earth education and communication within the framework of Srishti. The core values of this institution lie in transforming consciousness through its pedagogical approaches. My focus for both the IAIDP and EEC curriculums is the aim to enable the student to be a discerning designer, one who is liberated from the cosmology restricted to a marketplace, and a sense of time limited to cycles of fashion and technological innovations, as Findley puts them. A discerned practitioner emerges from investigating, researching, and creating in place and time, keeping all these complexities, the natural world, cultural histories, human notions of creativity and being across time. The challenges of operationalizing any curriculum lie in translating the vision of the course through diverse units, documentation, assessment, training faculty, and in evolving models of mentorship. Ensuring different aspects of the curriculum run cohesively and coherently across the different years of the program, both undergraduate and postgraduate, are key to the development and sustained evolution of the program. The design of units supported mentoring in the classes, primary and secondary research that both faculty and students immerse in to develop key ideas of the unit, extending the unit to develop new ways of being and making that are resonant with the curricular vision, and emerging both critical reflections and directions for engagement in the field are essential components of translating the vision of the curriculum and capabilities that we seek to develop in students. Two of the units that I created for IAIDP and EEC MDes students were co-taught with Sandhya Kalyanasudaram from August to November 2018. We are offering these two transdisciplinary units, Sustainable Institute and All of a Sudden Time as Paradox, as case studies to exemplify the curriculum design and its outcomes. The goals for these units were to support students in emerging an individual quest for developing an ethical and ecological consciousness, as well as a keen interest in sustainability leadership.
Ecological, social, cultural, and economic issues dynamically intertwine in the complex interplay of sustainability issues in India, and sustainable design must be evolved keeping in mind India's position in the world marketplace. It is within this complexity that our contemporary practice as artists and designers arises. It is impossible to separate the politics of self, culture, and ecology and making from our own personal practice. Reflective practice, ethics, values, being, intelligence, consciousness, and creativity create the basic texture in which these programs are rooted. The key questions that fuel both these programs are: what does it take to be human? What are the ethics of engaging with life? What is the responsibility of creativity? What is the epistemology of good art and design practice? The predominant pedagogical goal of environmental sustainability management education has focused on helping students increase their cognitive understanding of environmental sustainability in managerial practices and decision making. Yet recent studies call for a significant shift in this paradigm, requiring a more holistic pedagogy, that is, a pedagogy that integrates cognitive learning with emotional, spiritual, and physical learning. We asked ourselves the question of how we can find an internal meter for sustainable practices. Poole and Stuchel articulate that the industrial and Cartesian worldviews, alongside education and modern technologies, have left us with a separation consciousness. They suggest a closer observation of life to emerge a relational consciousness and turning inward to ask questions about how we can change ourselves to deal with the paradigms of both sustainability and the ecological crisis. Sustainable Institute Initiative is on the agenda of every major educational institution across the world and across disciplines. Creating a community garden and the Mati Eco Club were the first steps to this vision for our program. Pedagogy as well as assessment frameworks were carefully planned to create transdisciplinary engagement, contexts as well as methods that allowed students to take on large goals that enable them to engage with openness, question their own notions of disciplinarity as well as residues of Cartesian and industrial worldviews. Embodied practice and contemplative reflective making were two key principles that we decided to adopt as our core methods for the core units. A triangular patch of 500 square feet area was chosen for regeneration in a red soil area where erosion had occurred for several years, and the entire area was used by the nearby communities as a dumping site for garbage, construction waste, and other waste. The aim was to regenerate the land. Other goals were to create a community resource and rain garden with social, ecological, ethical, and learning design principles, to reflect on interdependence and coexistence of all other species, to strategically work with emergent systems and chaos, to develop a body of creative work based on the embodied experience of creating a garden. The broad approach to learning design included studying the soil quality, drainage rates of water, understanding the mind and body in relation to the simple act of digging, understanding the various layers of soil and the trash uncovered, consulting with experts, understanding the relationship between the elements and principles of art and design in visual works as applied to gardens, and how to design for a garden keeping seasonal parameters in mind. Creating pits, contour bunds, planting grasses, and embedding porous tiles along the edges to stop soil wash off. Document the work, reflections, develop an online blog, social media, and develop a charter. The second years and the first years work together by transitioning the work of the second year students to the first year students. And then they worked for about 7 weeks, including a 2 weeks as a self-designed inquiry.
The teaching pedagogy included multiple ways of thinking, working styles, and inspiring awareness methods that included deep listening, building alliances with community members, working with conflict resolution, personal transformative processes that looked at empathy, dealing with grief, moving from a place of paralysis regarding the ecological crisis to action through a reflective self, experiential and embodied learning, understanding that sustainability is an act of self transformation, understanding that sustainability is as much a social and behavioral change movement, and understanding that sustainability is a reflective and responsible creative practice.
Both the first and the second year students learn to persevere and persist under emergent problems and put in very long hours to overcome their internal resistance to clear the land and to create the rain garden as well as the resource garden. They first discovered that the land was being used as a rubbish dump and there was layers of trash under layers of soil. So they had to focus on removing all these trash before they could start doing anything with the land. They also discovered that the land had huge rocks and lots of small rocks that made it difficult to dig and to plant immediately. So they had to remove these and eventually buy new soil and vermicompost to create about 3 inches of new earth where they could finally start planting. All the students also worked together to build a fence to keep our cows and other grazing animals. Besides working on the land, they worked on creating a vision for the Mati Eco Club with the goal of involving the larger Srishti community. The students initially felt a lot of resistance because they were unsure about the future of the land, as the land did not belong to Srishti, but it belonged to the Karnataka State Housing Board. There were other land ownership issues by neighboring farms that tried to stake their claims on the land that also took away a lot of time from actual work on the land. Students needed assurance for their work, and they wanted to know that their work would not go waste even if the land belonged to the Karnataka Housing Board.
Upon reflection, the students acquired a great sense of ownership and joy, responsibility, teamwork, initiative, and leadership, combined with a love for working the land. They also reflected about time and learned how time is at once cyclical, geological, linear, non-linear, personal, psychological, emotional, expansive, and contracting. They also understood that time was not just anthropomorphic. Time belonged to and was different for different creatures. While resolving land ownership issues that arose during their project time, they worked on their leadership and diplomacy skills while ensuring they were able to continue their work. In creating their posts for Mati, they have learned to write about their work, and in their attempts to engage the larger student community, they've also learned and applied the principles of information design and social media marketing. The engaged work in a short span of 10 weeks has allowed us to emerge important educational outcomes as well as pedagogical principles that align with the capabilities of the two courses. Developing ecological consciousness through embodied practices of land reclamation and regeneration, community gardening, as well as creative thinking and linking these processes through community engagement and deep personal reflection have shown us ways in which we can encounter internal parameters for sustainability. These units are ongoing projects that we continue to work with students on for a long-term evolution of key ideas and to further develop an institution-led eco-club that takes on sustainability as a social change movement. We hope to emerge a model that can raise critical issues and challenges along with creating tools, strategies, and possibilities. Thank you. We would like to acknowledge the extraordinary institutional support from our director, Dr. Geeta Narayanan, and all the students who have worked with us, as well as faculty and support staff who have provided continuous guidance and support for the garden.